Blue set about stacking the remaining crates of wood that he'd found, one on top of the other. Before long, he had a stack that was a foot taller than he was. The crates wobbled slightly as he tested his weight against them. Feeling as content as he could with his work, Blue lifted himself onto the crates until he was standing shakily atop the wobbling tower of wood. The wind whipped across his face as he clung to the stone facade. Against the wall of the lighthouse and 3 feet above his head was a stony ledge that wrapped around the circumference of the building. Blue looked up at it, eager to reach this next step. He would have to jump to reach, but he worried that the crates below him would not support his weight if he did. Blue looked down at the ground below, and with no other choice, he jumped to the ledge. A sickening crack filled the air as the boxes below Blue splintered under his weight. His body slammed against the stony wall as suddenly there was nothing beneath his feet. One hand clung to the ledge and the other clawed at the wall, trying to get a grip. Blue's legs flailed in the air, scraping against stone and ivy. He closed his eyes, searching for stillness. After steadying himself with a few deep breaths, Blue had regained his composure. He threw his other arm up, grabbing the ledge and hanging on with both hands. With some effort, he lifted himself up onto it, hugging the rocky surface of the wall as he did. Once Blue was standing upright, he watched his breath as it spread out in soft clouds. His heart beat from the effort as the night air quickly cooled him. Blue looked down at the ground not too far below, then turned, looking up at the window now 20 feet above him. He reached up a couple feet higher towards the next ledge that wrapped around the building, and he heaved himself onto it, lifting his leg and landing his foot. He repeated this process, climbing the narrow ledges to the top of the lighthouse, careful to avoid the crumbling bricks and slippery moss. As he climbed, Blue could see white peaked mountains appear over the black forest that stretched on for miles behind him to the west. The glorious city lit up the night in the east across the wide river and the sea. He guessed that the river must be at least 2 or 3 miles across at its widest point. Beyond the river was a clearing with a few sparse trees. It stretched on for miles in either direction to the north and south, following the curve of the river. To the east of the clearing were massive cliffs that dropped down to the sea. Stretching his legs, Blue straightened himself upon the final ledge and lifted his arms, which now reached just below the glassless window. He looked up, tilting his head back to look inside. When he did, his weight shifted ever so slightly, sending his foot skidding across the smooth stone surface. His back twisted at a strange angle to compensate, sending him toppling backwards and away from the lighthouse wall. Blue's eyes widened in panic as he reflexively grabbed at the wall in front of him. The fingers on his right hand found a small handhold in a crack, leaving his left arm swinging wildly. He breathed as he tried to regain balance. Once he had steadied himself atop the treacherous ledge, Blue closed his eyes and pressed his forehead against the rock, sweat glistening across his brow. He hadn't been able to get a look inside the window, and he was too afraid to tilt back and try again. He would have to jump up to the window and climb inside, not knowing what he'd find in the darkness. Blue prepared himself for the final jump, wiping the sweat from his palms and onto his torn shirt. He looked down one last time at the ground 30 feet below. Then he jumped. Blue's hands grabbed at the windowsill as he hovered midair. To his relief, it held when he clung to it. Slowly, he began pulling himself up into the cool, damp room. As he did, he realized that his strength was nearly gone. With a final burst of energy, Blue heaved his body up and over the windowsill into the blackness. Crunch! The sound filled the room as Blue landed atop a pile of wooden planks and a small wooden stool. Sounds of squeaking and small, scurrying feet filled the room as Blue lay atop the pile of splintered wood. He groaned as he felt one of the rats scurry over his leg. Blue stayed there on the ground, exhausted, as the scurrying sounds retreated down and around somewhere beneath the floorboards. The dusty man looked around as he lay still, his eyes adjusting to the small moonlit room. On the wall near his feet was a small wooden desk lined with green and red books, musty from the elements. Above the desk was a small picture of a sailboat out at sea in a little red frame. The picture was hand-drawn with the entry Edmund T. Lutz, 1802, scrawled in ink atop the waves that lined the bottom of the page. Blue tilted his head and looked behind. There was a small bookshelf in front of a rusted spiral staircase that led down. On the bookshelf were a number of journals and notes, all handwritten with various dates and entries. Naomi was here, 1999. 1932, a harsh winter, penguins spotted. 1828, bacon, eggs, more ale. 1631, the sea is dead. They are all dead. Many of the pages were weathered and torn. There were drawings, too. Naked women, flowers, a picture of a wolf-like creature with jagged teeth and tiny red pupils. A few small candles lay scattered on the shelves. It didn't look like anyone had touched the place in a very long time. Blue sat up, wiping the dirt from his back, and continued looking around the space. Cobwebs stretched between the walls in shadowed corners. An old metal bucket lay on its side next to some stray bricks. The space was bare aside from the desk and the bookcase filled with notes. Blue turned to the shelves behind him and stood. The dusty floorboards creaked underneath him as he stepped towards the bookcase, curious for what he'd find.